June 23, 1936. Harlem, 142nd Street. The body was found at dawn. Marcus "Lucky Dollar" Williams, 28 years old, shot 6 times in the chest, twice in the head, execution style. He wasn't just another runner. Marcus had a wife, Clara, and twin daughters who just turned 5. He'd been saving up to buy a house in Sugar Hill. Had the down payment almost ready. Marcus was the kind of man who never missed church on Sunday, never shorted a payment, never gave Bumpy a reason to worry. In 4 years, he'd built trust in a world where trust got you killed. He was Bumpy Johnson's top numbers runner. Made collections every Tuesday and Thursday. Never missed a day in 4 years. Until now. The police found something else. A note pinned to Marcus's jacket, 4 words written in Italian. Harlem belongs to us. It was signed with a single initial, G. Vito Genovese had just declared war, and what Bumpy Johnson did in the next 48 hours didn't just answer that declaration. It rewrote the rules of organized crime in New York City forever. To understand what happened, you need to understand who Vito Genovese was in 1936. Vito wasn't just another mobster. He was Lucky Luciano's right hand, the enforcer, the man who did the dirty work while Luciano played politics. Born in Naples in 1897, Vito came to America at 15 with nothing but the clothes on his back. He started as a collector for local loan sharks. By 18, he'd killed his first man over a $50 debt. The police knew Vito was dangerous, but they could never make anything stick. Witnesses disappeared. Evidence vanished. By 1936, Vito had killed at least 15 men, maybe more. By the time he was 30, he'd helped Luciano reorganize the New York mob into the 5 families. But Vito wanted more than being second in command. He wanted an empire, and he was looking north to Harlem. The numbers racket in Harlem was making millions. Poor folks betting nickels and dimes that added up to serious money, and it was all controlled by black operators. Madame Stephanie St. Clair ran the biggest operation. Her enforcer was a young man named Bumpy Johnson. Vito had tried negotiating, sent emissaries to Harlem with offers, partnership, protection, the usual mob pitch. Madame St. Clair told them to get out. Bumpy Johnson stood in the corner, silent, staring with those cold eyes that made men check over their shoulders for weeks. So Vito decided to send a different kind of message. One written in blood. Marcus Williams wasn't random, he was strategic. Vito knew killing Bumpy's top runner would hurt operations and test Bumpy's response. Would Bumpy fold? Would he negotiate? Would he hide? Vito was about to find out. Bumpy Johnson had been in Harlem since 1919. He was 31 years old in 1936, but he'd already lived 3 lifetimes worth of violence. He'd arrived from South Carolina as a teenager, running from a lynch mob after his brother was accused of killing a white man. In Harlem, Bumpy found something he'd never had in the South, a chance to be more than what white society said he could be. He'd worked for William Hewitt as a teenager, learned the streets, learned the game, learned how to survive in a world that wanted him dead just for being black. But Bumpy was different from other enforcers. He was smart, read books in his spare time, philosophy, history, military strategy. He'd quote Sun Tzu to explain why he made certain moves. His favorite line, "Supreme excellence consists of breaking the enemy's resistance without fighting." That's exactly what he planned to do to Vito Genovese. When Madame St. Clair made him her chief enforcer in 1932, Bumpy had transformed Harlem's numbers game into a well-oiled machine, protected the runners, dealt with corrupt cops, kept the Italian mobsters at bay, until June 23, 1936, until Marcus Williams turned up dead with Vito Genovese's calling card. Bumpy got the news at 6:30 a.m. His lieutenant, a man named Illinois Gordon, knocked on his door. Bumpy took one look at Gordon's face and knew. "Marcus?" Bumpy asked. Gordon nodded. 6 in the chest, 2 in the head, note on his jacket. Says Harlem belongs to them, signed with a G. Bumpy was quiet for a long moment. Then he got dressed, put on his suit, his fedora, and walked out into the Harlem morning. He went straight to the spot where Marcus died. Police were still there. Crime scene tape, chalk outline, blood staining the sidewalk. Bumpy stood there for 5 minutes. Didn't say a word. Just looked at the spot where his man had fallen. Then he turned to Gordon. "Call a meeting, everyone, tonight, Small's Paradise, 9 o'clock. At 9 p.m., every major player in Harlem's underworld was packed into Small's Paradise. Numbers operators, policy bankers, enforcers, even corrupt cops who took protection money. The air was thick with cigarette smoke and tension. Everyone knew what this meeting meant: stand together or fall one by one. Bumpy walked in at 9:15. The room went silent. He didn't sit, just stood at the front of the room, looking at each face. "Marcus Williams was murdered this morning," Bumpy said. "Vito Genovese sent a message. Says Harlem belongs to them." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Fear, anger, uncertainty. "Some of you are thinking we should negotiate," Bumpy continued. "Pay tribute, make peace, let the Italians in." He paused. "Let that sit. But here's what I'm thinking. Vito Genovese thinks we're weak. Thinks because we're black, we'll roll over. Thinks he can kill one of ours and we'll beg for mercy." Bumpy's voice dropped lower, colder. "He's wrong." The room was dead silent now. "Tomorrow morning I'm sending Vito a message, and it won't be written on paper." Someone in the crowd spoke up. "Bumpy, Vito's got Luciano behind him, the whole organization. We can't fight the 5 families." Bumpy looked at the man. "We're not fighting the 5 families. We're fighting one man. And when that man bleeds, the rest will think twice." At 7 a.m. the next morning, June 24th, Vito Genovese walked out of his social club in Little Italy. Mulberry Street was quiet. A few shop owners sweeping storefronts. An old woman hanging laundry from a fire escape. Vito wore an expensive gray suit, gold watch chain glinting. He'd slept well. Dreamed about the Harlem money that would soon be his. He had 3 bodyguards. Carlo, Vinny, and Big Tommy. All armed, all killers. Vito felt untouchable. He'd sent his message to Harlem. Now he'd wait for Bumpy Johnson to come crawling with an offer. What Vito didn't know was that Bumpy Johnson didn't crawl. Vito's car was parked across the street, a black Packard. His driver, a man named Sal, was already inside, engine running. Vito walked toward the car. His bodyguards flanked him. That's when it happened. A truck pulled up. Fast. Screeching tires blocked Vito's car. Shop owners looked up. The old woman stopped hanging laundry. 3 men jumped out. Bumpy Johnson was in the middle. He wore a dark suit, fedora pulled low. His face was calm. Behind him were Illinois Gordon and Quick Lewis, their hands empty, visible. Vito's bodyguards reached for their guns, but Bumpy wasn't armed. His hands were empty, raised in the air. "Vito!" Bumpy called out, his voice calm, almost friendly. Vito stopped, confused. This wasn't how hits worked. You didn't show your face. You didn't announce yourself. "What the hell is this?" Vito demanded. "This," Bumpy said, walking closer, "is a conversation." Vito's bodyguards had their guns out now, pointed at Bumpy and his men, but Bumpy kept walking, slow, deliberate, like he was taking a morning stroll. "You killed Marcus Williams," Bumpy said. Not a question, a statement. "Yeah," Vito said, smiling. "I did. Sent you a message. Did you get it?" "I got it," Bumpy said. He was 10 feet away now. "Now I'm delivering mine." Vito's smile faded. "You got some balls showing up here. You know where you are? This is my neighborhood." "I know exactly where I am," Bumpy replied. "And you know what I learned? Your bodyguards, they're predictable." Vito frowned. "What?" That's when Bumpy's men moved, not toward Vito, toward the bodyguards. Illinois Gordon stepped behind Big Tommy, pressed a gun to his spine. "Drop it." Another man, Quick Lewis, had Vinny disarmed in seconds. Carlo tried to raise his weapon, but Bumpy was already there. One move, fast, brutal. Carlo's gun clattered to the pavement. In less than 5 seconds, Vito Genovese was standing alone, unarmed, surrounded. Bumpy picked up Carlo's gun, looked at it, then handed it back to him. "Take it," Bumpy said. Carlo hesitated. This was a trick. Had to be. "Take it," Bumpy repeated. Carlo took the gun, hand shaking slightly. So did Vinny. So did Big Tommy. All three bodyguards, rearmed, guns pointed at Bumpy and his men. The shop owners had stopped working. They were watching now. But nobody moved. Because Bumpy Johnson had just done something impossible. He'd disarmed 3 killers in broad daylight and then given them their weapons back. Vito stared at Bumpy. "What are you doing?" "Making a point," Bumpy said. "You think you're untouchable. Think you can walk into Harlem, kill my people, and we'll just take it." He stepped closer to Vito. Close enough to touch. "But here's the truth, Vito. I just proved I can get to you anytime I want. Your bodyguards? Useless. Your neighborhood? Doesn't matter. If I wanted you dead, you'd be dead right now." Vito's jaw clenched. His hand moved toward his waistband. "Go ahead," Bumpy said quietly. "Pull it. See what happens." For a long moment, nobody moved. The street was frozen. 3 bodyguards with guns. Bumpy unarmed. Vito's hand on his weapon. Then Vito smiled. Not a friendly smile, a dangerous one. "You're making a mistake," Vito said. "Maybe," Bumpy replied. "But here's what's going to happen. You're going to leave Harlem alone. You're going to tell Luciano that the numbers game up there is off limits, and if you ever touch one of my people again, I won't just embarrass you in front of your bodyguards, I'll make you disappear." "You threatening me?" "No," Bumpy said. "I'm promising you." Bumpy turned and walked back to his truck. His men followed. The truck pulled away. Vito stood there, surrounded by his bodyguards, in the middle of Little Italy, watching Bumpy Johnson drive away. And for the first time in his life, Vito Genovese felt something he hadn't felt in years. Fear. That afternoon, Vito called a meeting, not with Bumpy, with Lucky Luciano. They met at Luciano's restaurant in Manhattan. Rao's private room, just the two of them. A bottle of wine on the table, untouched. Vito was still angry. His pride was wounded. "This guy's a problem," Vito said, pacing. "He embarrassed me, in front of my men, in my neighborhood." Luciano took a long drag from his cigarette. "What did he do?" Vito told him. The whole story. How Bumpy disarmed his bodyguards. How he stood there, unarmed, and made threats. Luciano listened. Then he smiled. "You know what I think?" Luciano said. "I think Bumpy Johnson just saved your life." "What?" "He could have killed you, Vito. You said it yourself. He had the chance, but he didn't. You know why?" Vito didn't answer. "Because he's smart," Luciano continued. "He knows killing you starts a war we'd all lose, but embarrassing you? That sends a message without bodies piling up. So what do? Luciano stubbed out his cigarette. "We leave Harlem alone. For now. Bumpy Johnson just proved he's not some street thug. He's a strategist, and I don't go to war with strategists unless I have to." But Vito Genovese wasn't satisfied. Over the next 15 years, he'd keep testing Bumpy. Keep probing for weaknesses. The war between them wouldn't end until 1951, when Bumpy finally got sent to prison. But June 24, 1936, was the day it started. The day Bumpy Johnson walked into Little Italy, unarmed, and made Vito Genovese blink. The story spread through New York's underworld like wildfire. By nightfall, everyone from the Bronx to Brooklyn knew what happened. Some said Bumpy was crazy. Some said he was brilliant. Most said he was both. But everyone agreed on one thing. Bumpy Johnson was untouchable. And Harlem? Harlem stayed black, stayed independent, stayed under Bumpy's protection for the next 2 decades. Not because Bumpy had more guns, not because he had more men, because he had more guts, more brains, more understanding of what real power looked like. Vito Genovese learned something that day in 1936, something every mob boss in New York would eventually learn. You don't mess with Bumpy Johnson. You don't threaten his people. You don't test his resolve, because Bumpy didn't just fight back, he fought smart, and when Bumpy fought smart, you lost even if you were still breathing. Marcus Williams was buried 3 days later. Hundreds attended his funeral. The church on 138th Street couldn't hold everyone. People spilled out onto the street, standing in the June heat to pay their respects. Clara Williams, Marcus's widow, wore black and held her twin daughters close. The girls didn't understand why their father wasn't coming home. They kept asking when he'd be back from his trip. Bumpy stood in the back, silent, paying respects. He'd paid for the funeral, paid off the house Marcus had been saving for, set up a trust for the twin girls' education, but money couldn't bring Marcus back, couldn't give those girls their father, couldn't erase the guilt Bumpy felt for not seeing the attack coming. And when the funeral ended, Bumpy walked back to Small's paradise, sat at his usual table, and went back to running Harlem like nothing had happened. Because to Bumpy Johnson, protecting his neighborhood wasn't about vengeance. It was about principle, about proving that black folks in Harlem could run their own operations and stand up to anyone. In 1936, that was revolutionary. Black people were still being lynched in the South. Segregation was the law. Even in the North, black folks were expected to bow their heads. Bumpy Johnson didn't bow his head. Not for Vito Genovese, not for anyone. And principles, unlike men, don't bend, don't break, don't negotiate. June 23, 1936. The day Vito Genovese thought he could take Harlem. June 24, 1936. The day Bumpy Johnson proved him wrong.